Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a second submission by Victoria with her horse Dylan. She's going to start off lunging. And right away we can see that the horse's walk is a little better than it has been in the previous video. I can already see that the horse's belly is improving. That is, when we get a horse working over its back, it's not that it's just working over its back, it's working its entire core, just much as a person does when they learn to do Pilates, for instance, or correct yoga, or even correct weightlifting or exercise of any kind. You should be engaging your core. Well, we want the horse to do the same thing. And so when we see a horse very extended or distended sort of through the flank area, that tells me that its back is quite dropped. But this horse has improved in that way quite a bit since the first video that I saw. It's still got a ways to go, but it's way better than it was. The main thing here, I want you to compare the video trot on the lunge line to the trot that we saw under saddle later in the same video. So keep an idea of how that looked there. Now she's switching to the side reins here, which I think is probably good for this horse. I would say, just watch it and see what happens. If you find the horse starts getting hollow again, you may want to go back to the shambone for a few days. But this horse looks like it's about ready to go into the side reins. I usually only use the shambone on extremely hollow horses and that are extremely ewe-necked. I find that the side reins usually work well. But for people just beginning in this, the shambone can really be a help, as it does a lot of the work for you in getting the horses to stretch out and down. But when they have begun to do that fairly well, as this horse has, then we can begin to move to the side reins. And this is all looking good. The horse is stretching into it quite nicely there. And once again, I want you to look at the difference later on in the tape when we watch the trot work under saddle. We'll see that the horse is not trotting in the same way that he's trotting here. That's really good how he's stretching down there. It's nice active. If you look at the hocks, once again, it looks like there's a nice bicycling action there, a nice round action in the hock. So that tells us that the horse is working through its back a little bit. And what we'll see under saddle is that it doesn't look quite that good. So once again, compare the two. And then you have to decide which is more important, the lunging work or the work under saddle. And in this case, I think the work on the lunge line is way more important, as it always is until we get the horse firmly consistent over its back, which can take quite some time. Once again, it takes a year to establish the top line, 2 years to confirm that top line to the point that you can begin to develop collection. Remembering once again what collection is. It is not shortening the horse's gaits and pulling its head up. Collection is simply the degree to which the horse lowers the three joints of the hind legs and maintains that lowered position of the hindquarters, which gives the horse that wonderful uphill look that we all like so much. But we can't make that artificially by pulling the head up, because if we pull the head up instead of lowering the back end, what happens is, of course, the horse becomes tense, stiff, and drops his back up from underneath us. It may raise its front legs up higher, and this is the thing that we have to all keep looking for, Dressage is the antithesis of things like saddlebreds and Tennessee walkers, where that's the whole game, is getting the front legs to pull up high. That is not at all what dressage is about. Dressage is about what's happening with the back end. Whatever happens in the front end is the result of what's happening behind when the horse is ridden and correctly trained. So we have seen this exaggerated front leg action sort of take over dressage, where we're seeing people getting 70% scores with totally hollow horses just because their legs move up. So that is, they have a lot of high knee action. And that's not at all what we're looking for, nor does it have anything to do with collection whatsoever. Every horse, depending on its conformation, is going to have a different sort of height of its knee action, so to speak. But once again, we're not trying to elevate the front end. We're trying to lower the back end in collection. And that's what gives the horse that uphill appearance. That's why things like saddlebred horses, they went to tacking these ridiculous shoes onto them, where they're tacking an extra foot of shoe onto the foot. So the horse looks like it's standing uphill. We can see how ridiculous that is. And of course, we all know the horrible ramifications that doing things like that has on the horse's life. It's very rare to see a saddlebred over 8 years old that's still sound. And that isn't completely swayback. So we don't want to go down that route. And in fact, the guy who invented park seat riding in New York City thought he was imitating classical dressage, and back in the late 1800s, and proudly told people that he could do what the Spanish riding school and European riders were doing in a very short period of time. Well, it's only a phony picture. So once again, it's movement that it's all about, and movement from behind. So this is really quite good. He's swinging really active here. And once again, this is the kind of trot that I'd like to see once we get the horse under saddle. So if you can't get the trot looking this good under saddle, my suggestion is you simply do more lunging until the horse is strong enough to do that. or you send the horse more actively forward in the trot. But we'll get to that in a moment when we get to the trot work. But this is a good swinging trot here. He's stretching into the contact. I like how you're keeping the horse on a big circle and walking with the horse, who seems quite amenable to all this work. And what you'll find is the beauty of classical dressage is that, when we train horses correctly, they don't resist. And if you run into a lot of resistance in this type of training, you need to look at things like what else could be going wrong to cause the horse discomfort. For instance, pain in the back, an ill-fitting saddle, this sort of thing. So once again, that was a wonderful trot that we saw there on the lunge line. I think at the point where you could start cantering that horse a little bit on the lunge line to some effect. Not very long. Remember, when you canter on the lunge line, only a circle, 2 around, and back to the trot. We don't want to do a lot of small circles in the canter at this level, or at any level really. So getting back on in the walk here, this walk looks pretty good. It could be a little more active and swinging. It looks a little pokey, a little bit like the horse is pulling its back legs out of mud. You kind of look at it back there, kind of a little sticky. And you can tell just from the weight of the rider that he kind of dropped his back a little bit there on you, and the head came up a little higher, and the walk stopped swinging through so well. So once again, I want you to get a much more active walk, much more swinging and active in the horse in the walk when you're on its back, and see if you can get the same kind of movement that we got on the lunge line. Once again, if you can, it will come in time, but just keep comparing that beautiful trot that you got on the lunge line with that stretch with what you're getting under saddle. And once again, once you start into the trot work here, which of course I've already watched, you'll see that there's quite a bit of difference, and he falls out behind, so to speak, with his hind legs quite often. But this is a better walk. You're starting to get him to stretch there. I think you could start adding some leg yields. So for instance, for this horse, I'd just go down the center line from where you are here and do a leg yield to the right. You always want to start your leg yields when you're first beginning horses in leg yields, in the direction of the turn. That is, if you turn left, you're going to leg yield to the right and just continue that natural swing of the horse to the outside a little bit is a good way to start them. That is, when the horse starts to make the turn, the centrifugal force will try to pull him to the outside anyway. So put your leg on there just as you make the turn and begin your leg yields that way. Later on, you'll want to start from a straight line, but it's always helpful in the beginning to do that. So just as you start to turn, just about the time the horse gets straight onto the center line, before it quite gets there, you're already moving him in the leg yield towards the outside. So once again, I'd like to see a much more active walk here. This is really a kind of a bit pokey to be of a lot of value to the horse. We'd like to see it a little more active. And you can see, put your leg on there, brought his head up a little bit. I see you trying to activate the horse, and that's good. Going into a trot here. So once again, with that walk work, I was never really very happy with that walk work. I would like to see more of it. I'd like to see it much more swinging and active, and just getting it to the point where it can stay nice and consistent. So once again, when you come to this trot work here, I want you to take a look at how the back, see how there's very little flexion in the hock, and if you look at where the horse is pushing, it's pushing now with the hind leg when the leg is way behind the body. So that tells me when you got on the horse that it collapsed quite a bit through the back and is not coming through to the same degree that it was on the lunge line. So if you can't get it to the same place, you might want to spend more days just lunging before you get on. This is looking a little better here, but you can still see it's quite flat-footed. And once again, looking at the hind legs, there's not much flexion in the joints there, and the hind legs are kind of out behind the body a little bit. So I'd like to see you just activate this horse. If I were there with you right now, I'd be saying just send him on a little bit and see if you can just get the horse a little more active and see if we can't get a similar trot to what we got on the lunge line. But once again, this is not terrible. He's not totally hollow. You're just not quite getting everything that you could. It's not bad to do this every few days or so, riding like this to see what you have. But I think you'll see that if you'll stick to the lunging for a little while longer, with a horse like this, if I'm seeing that big a difference between your trot on his back and the trot on the lunge line, it tells me you probably just need to do more work on the lunge line for a while until you can get it to look the same. That is, you can get the horse swinging it over his back. And you can see how there he kind of drops out behind. And once again, this looks rather flat-footed. There's not any thrust really up to the horse, which we were starting to get a little thrust upward. That is the push off of the ground that the horse with its hind leg onto the center of the body is what I mean by thrust there. And that's not much happening here. It's a pretty flat-footed trot. So we'd like to just, first I'd like you to try just getting the horse more active. You said it felt like you were going really fast. Well, it probably is. I see so many people today, and I look at riding lessons, and they're barely moving around the arena. As my father used to say, riding like that, you never make it to the next town. So remember that dressage is all about efficiency of movement. So a horse that's losing its back end out the back is not moving very efficiently because it's literally taking one step forward and one step back in a sense. Same thing, you know, once again here you can see how he gets a little irregular on the turn there, which tells me that it's a little bit difficult for him. Once again, behind I'm talking about, it kind of drops out the hind legs a little bit. So once again, just keep trying to open up this trot. It's going to feel bigger to you than you're probably used to from what you said in your email there that came along with this. But keep trying to open up. Have fun, you know. Riding is about movement. Now, the walk is a little better after that trot work, so this looks better when you come back to this. Swinging and active. Once again, if you look at this horse, when you can see it perpendicular to the screen here, that is, we can see the whole length of its back, you can see there's quite a hole behind the saddle there that needs to be filled up. So this horse has quite a bit of top line developing to do before you're going to be too worried about how perfect his trot's going to be. So once again, I do a lot more work on the lunge line, maybe just riding every few days. This walk does look better than the first walk we had, but it's still a little ponderous, as I might say. It needs to be swinging much more actively forward, and just try to get everything more active, so to speak, in the beginning. You know, first we just have to kind of mobilize the hindquarters, as Mr. Oliveira used to say. You know, we have to get the hindquarters working and doing something, then we can begin to manipulate it into the position that we want over time. But this is a better walk than we started with, but though it still looks, once again, has a little bit of that, you know, walking in mud kind of feel to it, that his hind legs look like they're pulling up a little bit, like he's having a little difficulty there, but it's better than when we started. And once again, you could start some leg yield. As I said earlier, I'd like to see you starting some leg yields in the walk, which will help him to step deeper under the body. The leg yields are the first lateral movement, and a preliminary exercise to shoulder in, of course, which is the most important movement that we have. That is in terms of getting the horse into the outside rein and control. And it's the most useful exercise that we have in terms of we do it more than any others, and it has the most beneficial effect on the horse. And that, you know, when you do a shoulder in or leg yield, the horse is quite clearly stepping underneath its body. So every time it steps underneath with that hind leg, it's going to lift up the back a little bit when it pushes off from the center of the body. And that's what we're looking to do. You know, and feel those moments when you're riding the horse, so that you can, when you feel that horse step underneath itself, there's a little bit of a leg yield here she's going to do for us here. Few steps on over to the rail. Now we can see here she's doing a little bit of a leg yield. He needs to step under a little bit more. Once again, everything needs to just be much more active. So when you're in the walk, as long as the horse is not tense, keep trying to get the walk more and more active. And as you said, he was very slow in the beginning of the training of this horse. So, you know, it's going to take a little time. Don't frustrate yourself. Coming back to the trot here. Once again, there's still just kind of a flat movement. You see how the horse loses rhythm when you go around that turn there. Kind of loses its back end, kind of falls out behind it a little bit. So I'd like to see you make the horse even much more active in the trot. Just activate it forward. Don't worry about what it's doing for the time being, and just get it more active so you just feel like you have a more active swinging trot. And in time, if we can get the horse to stretch, once again, the stretch is, not every horse can get its back up when we first get on them. But almost all of them can learn to stretch. And if they stretch long enough, the back, that's what will prepare the horse to bring its back up, that is, and repair the damage that's been done to a horse that hasn't been developed correctly. So once again, a little more active here. You can see how she came around that corner here. Once again, the back end kind of fell out behind. There's not much flexion in the hock. Once again, I want you to study the trot that you got in the lunge line and look how active and round the horse was moving its hocks. And that's what we're not seeing here when you're under saddle. So keep trying to send the horse a little more actively forward, though this is a little better here. This trot's looking better as we're coming around here, but still just needs to be a little more active. Once again, as you come around there, when you see the horse perpendicular to the screen, you can see that little hole behind the saddle. Now, you start to stretch into it a little bit going down that long side, and that's looking better. Once again, you can add the leg yields in the walk and trot. That would be the first exercise that you would be doing of any kind of lateral work, and it's the preliminary exercise to doing even a circle. You can't really do a good circle till the horse will do a leg yield, because every leg yield should feel like the horse is leg yielding out into the outside rein. And of course, later on in shoulder in, the horse moves up to and stands up to the outside rein, which is once again our foundation of training. That is, we get the horse to come under and move into the outside rein and stay there. But this trot is looking a little better, once again, but still just not quite good enough. So what I'd like to see in the next video that I get from you is a much more active trot. You know, think of it as just going faster for the time being until you just get the horse activated and moving. And of course, that will help the horse's breathing a bit, he'll start to get a little more dynamically fit, that is aerobically fit, which is what we want with these kind of horses that are a bit lethargic. We need to get that kind of horse a little more aerobically fit. Thoroughbred horses get fit very quickly, and we don't have to do a lot of that. So these warm bloods, however, require a lot more of that type of work. So that they have enough wind in order to do the job. It's why they had to alter, for instance, the 3-day eventing so much when they started using warm bloods, because the warm bloods simply can't make the kind of distances that the thoroughbred horses could make, or the speeds that they could make. But so we have to alter our training program accordingly to the type of horse that we have. A very hot kind of horse, we don't want them to be very fit, because the fitter they are, they tend to be hotter and hotter. So those kind of horses we have to keep very quiet and not do a lot of wind building. With this kind of horse, we want to do a little more of that kind of work. Now the trot is looking a little better here as it's going. That was probably the best end you've done right there. The horse didn't fall out too badly behind that time. So this trot is improving. I think if you just, carry a little stick with you, if you're not doing so, I can't really see in this picture, but and just send the horse on a little more actively. It looks like your footing is a little slipping there too, so that made a bit of the problem there. It looks a little hard in that ring right now, but still just getting a little more active. This trot is looking better now as it's starting to swing. And once again, you can add those leg yields in both the walk and the trot. Good, that was a little better. Helped the frame a little better there. Now, we still would like to see this horse stretch much deeper in your trot work. Part of the problem that you're not getting the horse to come under as much as it needs to stretch deeper, I feel, and his back isn't developed. You can see how, if you kind of look closely, see what you're looking at, you can see how this horse is kind of pulling really with its shoulders. Its hindquarters aren't thrusting you forward. It's kind of stabbing the ground with its front end and kind of pulling you along forward. So that will all improve as we get the horse to work more and more over its back, and we can get the horse deeper into the stretch. I'd say you'd be much better off doing much more work on the lunge line, getting the horse deeper for a longer period of time than so much riding here until we can get the horse to stretch into it. Because what I'm seeing here in the trot work here is we're really just not getting the horse out and down and deep enough in the stretch in order to get his back to come through as much as we like. It's not bad, but once again, it just needs to be more so. Once again, even in the trot work here, we can see that while the belly is better than the first video that I saw of the horse, it's still got a long ways to go to come all the way up and really engage the core. So once again, a lot more swinging active trot, just in straight lines is fine. You can add just the leg yields in the walk and trot, which will help you a little bit. That was looking a little bit of there, not a bad transition downwards. I like how you didn't just slam the horse, always remembering to take your time in those downwards transition. You shouldn't be doing any sitting trot on a horse at this level. The worst thing that I see in dressage today is that people think you're not doing dressage if you're not sitting to the trot, and they sit and sit and sit on these poor hollow-backed horses, and it destroys the horses. And worse yet, or as bad, is it also destroys the hips of the rider. I see so many riders riding in pain and back pain because the horse is not supporting them. So when you sit on a horse that doesn't support you and lift you through the saddle, it does a lot of bad things to your hip joints and your lower back. So when a horse is carrying you correctly, it comes up and stretches up into you and supports you, and you find it very easy to trot. So I like how the fact that you're not doing any sitting trot, that's very correct. Coming back to the walk here once again, now that's looking a little better there. That's good. By the end of that's looking a little better in the walk there. But my biggest advice to you at this point is just more lunging work. I would go between the shambone and the side reins with this horse because he seemed to stretch a little better in the shambone yet, but it certainly was not bad on the side range. You can certainly do that. So improvement, a nice improvement that I've seen here. We just still need to get everything a lot more active. When you ride, just concentrate on getting on and just making go forward, 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 a little more quickly. Now, some people say you're running on the forehand. That's okay in the very beginning. We just have to get the horse activated. We'll get the horse off the forehand later, which takes a while. All right, but the moment he's just pulling with the shoulders. So very good work and improvement over the last one. I look forward to seeing you again, more active trot, and keep up the good work. This is Will Faerber. Thank you.